We are not naive. We know that if there is no money to be made, the pharmaceutical companies don't care how exciting and wonderful the treatment might be. They're not going to pay for the research it takes to bring it to market. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam. I've been living with multiple sclerosis for 40 years. And I know that you've noticed I have this background thing today. You wouldn't believe all the computer problems that I've been having, and I don't know how I'll get to the bottom of them. But in the meantime, at least I found this attractive background to use so that you're not staring at all the mess in my house because I'm using a different computer today. But I wanted to tell you about an article that I saw recently about the vaccine that's being developed for Epstein-Barr virus, EBV. And if you've been watching the channel or following the news in the MS world, there's becoming a growing consensus actually that EBV plays a role, maybe not the causative role, but certainly a causative role in the development later on of multiple sclerosis. In truth, about 90% of the population ends up infected with EBV at some point. Usually when they're fairly young, teenagers are very prone to getting it. They call it the kissing disease. Mononucleosis is the name for it. But be that as it may, many scientists believe that it would perhaps even stop MS from even happening in somebody if they were vaccinated against EBV and therefore never got it. It's exciting to see that progress is being made on this front. I want to read you an article that I found on this topic. The article was published on January 3rd, 2025 in Multiple Sclerosis News Today, and it's called MoDex's EBV Vaccine Given to First Participant in Phase 1 Trial. So we're just starting out. U.S. trial seeking 200 healthy adults ages 18 to 30 to test novel vaccines. So as you see, Phase 1 involves healthy adults because they need to make sure that this is going to be safe. So they're not so much worried about effectiveness yet. They're looking at safety. They say that a Phase 1 clinical trial that is investigating a new vaccine against the Epstein-Barr virus, EBV, a well-established risk factor for developing multiple sclerosis, in healthy volunteers, has dosed its first participant. The vaccine, called MDX-2201, is being developed by MoDex Therapeutics, an OPKO health company, in collaboration with Merck, known as MSD outside the US and Canada. The study, and there's the number, seeks to enroll 200 participants ages 18 through 30 at several sites in the U.S. to determine the safety and tolerability of its vaccine administered via 3 injections into the muscle over 6 months. The vaccine's ability to generate an immune response against EBV will also be assessed over about 1.5 years. So these adults are going to be probably EBV positive, I would think, because by the time you're 18, they've shown this by doing different blood studies that most of us have been exposed to EBV by then. So it's not really so much a question of preventing people from getting EBV, but they want to see if it's safe, first of all, and then secondarily, they want to see if the body produces antibodies against EBV. And they say that we are grateful to the participants and physicians who are actively engaged with Merck in our joint efforts to explore the potential of MDX-2201 as a novel vaccine against EBV, Elias Zerhouni, MD, President and Vice Chairman of OPKO, said in a company press release. Under the collaboration, MoDex and Merck worked together to gain clearance for clinical trials of MDX-2201, and Merck is now responsible for leading this and future trials. It will also be in charge of all regulatory activities and for marketing MDX-2201 if it is approved in the future. ModeX will receive an undisclosed payment for the start of the current trial and is also eligible for other milestone payments and royalties on global sales. And they say that Epstein-Barr is a common virus found in people. EBV is one of the most common human viruses infecting most people at some point in their lives. The virus is best known for causing mononucleosis, also known as kissing disease, but it has been linked to a range of autoimmune conditions and cancers. In MS, EBV is a strong risk factor for developing the condition, increasing the likelihood by about 32 times. It's been shown that some EBV proteins are very similar in structure to certain proteins in the brain, so when the body mounts an immune response to fight the virus, it may inadvertently cause damage to healthy parts of the nervous system. While EBV infection alone is not sufficient to cause MS, it may work together with other environmental and genetic risk factors to trigger the disease. Thus, a vaccine that prevents EBV infection in people at higher risk for MS is thought to help prevent the disease from developing. MDX-2201 is a nanoparticle that carries at its surface pieces of 4 EBV proteins, GP350, GHGL, and GP42, that mediate EBV's entry into human cells. It is designed to help the body recognize these proteins as harmful so that an efficient immune response is mounted if the body ever comes into contact with EBV. By targeting 4 different viral proteins, the approach is expected to be more effective than previous vaccines focusing on GP350 alone, according to the press release. Our Merck collaboration combines their discovery and clinical development expertise with our innovative and unique technology platform against this latent virus, where an approved vaccine could have significant implications for the majority of people around the world, Zerhouni said. Okay, well, now I want to look at something a little bit different. We're going to look at a couple of articles from a different take. It's more of the financial take. As I said earlier, if there's no money to be made, then the pharmaceutical companies are just not going to be lining up to fund the research for this. So I wanted to give you some insight into how this new announcement is affecting the financial world, because that tells you something about it. Whether you're cynical or not is your choice, but I guess what's good to know is this actually making any waves in the financial markets. And so I found this reported by Zacks.com. OPKO Health announces progress in EBV vaccine study, stock gains. That tells you pretty much everything you need to know, but we'll just look at a little bit of this. I don't think we need to go through the basics because we've sort of seen that, although I'll link this below and you can certainly follow it up. And I do want to look at quickly at this piece here, that the stock is up following the news. Following the announcement, shares of the company gained nearly 4.1% till yesterday's closing. And this article was published on the 8th of January. I think I forgot to mention that. So, pretty recent. And we don't know what the stock has done since then because I don't have that data. And you know how stock is, it fluctuates up and down, sometimes pretty radically. But the initial reaction to this news was positive from the stock market point of view. So, yes, they're thinking there is money to be made. As they say, historically, the company has gained a top-line boost from its various research and development programs and positive study outcomes. We expect market sentiment on the stock to remain positive around this announcement too. They go on to say that OPKO Health currently has a market capitalization of 1.02 billion. So we're not talking about a small player here, even though you may not have ever heard of them, because I certainly haven't. It has a current ratio of 2.97, favorable, I think they mean more favorable, than the industry's 2.44 in the last reported quarter. OPK delivered an earnings surprise of 130%. That's pretty impressive. Will it hold? We'll see. I think a lot's going to depend on the results of these trials that are just beginning now. They say the significance of OPKO's health announcement. We're not going to read that part because we've already read the article that pertains. So let's go ahead and get to the next section. In the section that is titled Industry Prospects to Benefit OPK, per a report by BCC Research, the global market for nanoparticles in biotechnology, drug development, and drug delivery is expected to grow from $102.7 billion in 2023 to $156.8 billion by 2028 at a CAGR, whatever that is, of 8.8%. Factors such as increasing research and development activities in the nanoparticle analysis field, rising cases of cancer, and technological advancements are likely to drive the market. Because I don't know that we covered this anywhere else yet, but it is not just EBV that they're looking at this for. They're looking at it as an answer to a number of diseases, including some cancers. So I know that that's probably part of what's going to drive the market, not just multiple sclerosis, because sad to say, I don't know whether MS alone would be enough to make that big of an influence on the market. You might have figured that out, but we just don't have enough people with the disease to warrant that kind of expenditure. And I guess that's, in a way, it's kind of amazing there have been as many research projects around multiple sclerosis, because you know that in order to get those going, you've got to have funding. Somebody has to be willing to fund it, which means that they're expecting a return on investment. So much the more if this EBV vaccine benefits not only people with MS, but people with some cancers and some other conditions. And it only makes sense. I hate to be a little too Pollyanna about it, but let's face it, it only makes sense. This section here talks about OPKO's, I'm going to call it OPKO, even though it reminds me of Ronco or some of the other silly companies they had around when I was a kid, but it's easier to say. So we're going to call it OPKO. And they say here, OPKO Health's notable development. In October of 2024, OPKO Health's ModeX was awarded $35 million of additional funding under an existing contract with the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, part of the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The funding brings the total support awarded to ModeX to $110 million out of $205 million if all options are executed. So if that next clinical trial goes well, guess what? We're going to get more money. Okay, and then the final part here is OPK's share price performance. And I thought this graph was interesting. Let's just take a look here in a sec. It says shares of the company have gained 45.2% in the past year compared with the industry's 6.4% rise and the S&P 500's 25.5% growth. So here is the chart. It's a little bit hard to read, I admit. But the blue line, the one on top, is OPKO and how they're doing. And the red line in the middle is S&P 500 composite. And then the green line on the bottom is medical instruments market. So it's outperforming both the general S&P 500, which is all stocks that are included there. So a wide range of industries included, and then the green line, which is more in line with the field of medical technology. So pretty impressive for now, but does that mean anything to us? I don't really know. But I guess, if we're going to see a cure anytime on the horizon, or even an effective treatment that stops everything in its tracks, it's going to take money. And the only way you're going to get money is to attract investors, and the only way you attract investors is by doing well in the stock market like you see here. But as you might guess, if there's one company that's doing well in this area, and those lines look that promising, you can bet your bottom dollar that some other company or companies gonna get on the bandwagon. So I found this in Eureka Alert. The press release came out on December 17th of 2024. Not to be outdone, there's a startup that's coming out of Germany called EBVSly, I guess is how you would say it. And let's find out more about it. It says EBVSly, a spin-up of Helmholtz Munich, officially started operations on 11 November 2024. The company is developing a prevention vaccine against diseases caused by the Epstein-Barr virus, EBV. The aim is to protect people from a range of serious diseases such as infectious mononucleosis, which pretty much everyone gets, secondary diseases such as multiple sclerosis, at least we got top billing in the secondary category, and myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome. That's another one. Actually, the chronic fatigue is pretty widespread. A lot of people have that. And certain types of cancer. So this gives you a better idea of the target for dealing with all these different diseases, which would make the investment community pretty excited. They say that EBVSly is based on a research project supported by Helmholtz Munich and the German Center for Infection Research, DZIF. The vaccine was developed by leading scientists in the field of Epstein-Barr virus research, and the aim is now for the company to carry out professional product development. They say it's an innovative vaccine based on virus-like particles. EBVSly's first vaccine candidate utilizes virus-like particles, or VLPs, that are structurally derived from EBV. These are similar to the Epstein-Barr virus but do not contain viral genetic material and are therefore not infectious. With the authentic structure of the virus, these VLPs feign an infection to the immune system and thus trigger a targeted immune response against EBV. Preclinical studies in animal models have impressively confirmed these properties. Now, I just want to pause right there for a minute because when I was a kid, vaccine had a definite meaning. And the word vaccine, it comes from vacca, which is the word for cow in Italian. It refers back to the days of the first true vaccine, which was the smallpox vaccine, which, as you may know, was derived from cowpox, much, much less virulent. So they were able to use cowpox vaccine to trigger the immune response to smallpox. That is a true vaccine. And I'm thinking that what they're describing here sounds pretty close to a true vaccine. You're using something much less virulent to trigger an immune response. And I like that. See, to me, that's the way vaccines ought to operate. It's rather beautiful and simple, and I kind of like it that way. They say that Professor Wolfgang Hammerschmidt of Helmholtz Munich and the DZIF explains, the Epstein-Barr virus is extremely complex. Our approach is designed to pull the virus's teeth without altering its protein combinations, ensuring a targeted immune response. This vaccine offers the potential to protect millions of people from the serious consequences of EBV infection. There's a wide range of applications for the vaccine, they say. Let's see a little more about that and see how that compares to what we've been hearing. The Epstein-Barr virus, which belongs to the herpes virus family, is one of the most common viruses in humans worldwide. It is estimated that around 90% of the world's population is infected with the virus. An infection in early childhood is usually asymptomatic. However, if it occurs later in life, it can cause infectious mononucleosis and secondary diseases such as ME/CFS. In addition, EBV is associated with around 200,000 cases of cancer worldwide each year, including various types of lymphoma. Recent research shows that EBV is also the most important risk factor for multiple sclerosis, a chronic autoimmune disease of the nervous system. The EBV vaccine is intended to prevent infectious mononucleosis and thus also protect against severe and long-lasting secondary diseases such as ME/CFS. It also has the potential to protect against certain EBV-associated cancers and post-transplant lymphoproliferative disease, which can occur after transplantation. In particular, the team hopes that the vaccine will also reduce the risk of developing multiple sclerosis. Yay! I'm glad to see that it's kind of the particular thing that they're hoping to see. And they talk about rapid implementation in clinical trials are planned. Now, I don't think they've started them yet. I went out and looked. Couldn't find it, but then again, maybe I just missed it. But I didn't see it yet. EBVSLE has received around 12 million euros in funding to date. And that's a goodly amount of money, including from the Helmholtz Validation Fund and the DZIF. Partners include the Ludwig Maximilians University of Munich and the TUM University Hospital. The vaccine is developed and manufactured in accordance with the strict requirements of Good Manufacturing Practice, or GMP. The founding members of EBVSLE are currently looking for further investors to ensure that the vaccine candidate is financed and tested in clinical trials as quickly as possible. The founding of EBVSLE is an important step toward accelerating the further development of the vaccine candidate, EBV001, in clinical trials, says Dr. Sebastian Goy, CEO of EBVSLE and project manager in the product development infrastructure at the DZIF. We have high hopes that the vaccine candidate will protect millions of people worldwide from serious diseases associated with the Epstein-Barr virus in the future. And that's probably all we need to know about that, but I'm just going to say there's two things here that I like. Number one, I like the name. It's kind of cute and clever. But I also like the fact that it sounds like it's a true vaccine. The other one that we looked at, the Modex one, looks like there's some nanoparticle things involved, and I'm not saying that nanoparticles are a bad thing. Don't think I'm saying that. But I just kind of am intrigued to know that there's still interest in developing an actual true vaccine for something, because I haven't seen that in quite some time. Well, now you know that there's something going on. And as far as we know, there might even be more than just these two companies. These were the two that I found. But it gives you an idea that it's not just that multiple companies are trying to develop the same thing, but that the approaches that they're coming from are somewhat different. And I think that's all to the good. Diversity in scientific inquiry is always helpful because one thing might turn out to be better than another, either for efficacy or side effects or cost, whatever it might be. So let's just hope that these are available to us, well, certainly within 5 years, maybe even sooner. Patience is a virtue, they say, but it isn't fun, and that's what I say. I was all set to post this, and then I saw Professor G's MS Selfie podcast, listened to that, and found out he had some questions that I hadn't even thought about. So let's listen to those.
Now, the good news for the field is that there is a gold rush happening at the moment with several big pharmaceutical companies developing EBV vaccines in the hope of preventing IM. Now, I want to make an assumption that one of the companies gets regulatory approval and marketing authorization for the EBV vaccine, and it's licensed now to reduce the incidence and potential severity of infectious mononucleosis. The question I want to ask is, will public health officials and governments adopt the vaccine nationally? Will they find the resources to pay for vaccines? Vaccines tend to be quite expensive, and there's always this rationing issue: who should get the vaccine? And will they fund, real-world registry studies to see if downstream diseases like MS, lupus, and Hodgkin's disease are preventable? And I'm not 100% convinced at the moment. Vaccine uptake by governments is generally very slow, and potentially even slower in the current environment, considering that backlash that was seen after the rapid rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines. And this has led to the rise in influence of the anti-vaccine lobby. And there's also been recent problems with the development of the respiratory syncytial virus and the rotavirus vaccines, which I think has also dented public confidence in vaccines, particularly new vaccines. So there's no certainty that if a pharmaceutical company spends the $2 to $3 billion to develop a vaccine and it gets a license and an approval, that the government will necessarily adopt it. In addition to preparing the post-licensing studies, there are many fundamental questions concerning EBV and its role in human biology that need to be answered. These will need to be done in parallel. For example, what will the impact of remaining EBV negative be as we get older? Will an adolescent vaccine, for example, create an older population that is susceptible to IM as vaccine immunity wanes? And we know that EBV is one of the viruses that has co-evolved with humans, and it may play a central role in human biology. So will eliminating EBV from the human population have adverse effects? And so I just want to state that I have many miles to go before I sleep if I want to answer all these questions.
That's all I have for you today. So until I see you again in my next video, please do continue to take really good care of yourself, and I'll see you again soon.